All right, we're back. We are MAPD124, that's advanced iOS. And in the winter 2017 semester, it doesn't feel like winter today. It feels like one of the first days of spring, I would say, finally. And it's lesson 13, part 1 of our broadcast. We're talking about, at a very high level, iOS notifications today and what they look like, how to set them up, and the things we got to do to make them work. Okay. So I'm going to run a new project. I'm just starting off a new Xcode project today. So we're going to start off with a single view application again, just for testing. I'm going to turn off unit tests. We did unit tests last week. So if you wanted to see that, you can certainly go and take a look at that from last week. We're just going to name this what it was before. So MAPD124 underscore and the name of our lesson today, which is for winter 2017. And it's lesson, underscore again, lesson 13. That's what we're going to call it. I'm going to use a Git repository locally like normal, create my app. And just to get going on this, I'm going to go to GitHub right away. And on GitHub, kind of create my new application. So again, MAPD 124, and it's winter 2017, lesson 13 on GitHub. I'm going to grab this thing and go back to Xcode, and inside source control, I'm going to go into configure, and I'm going to add in the remote, like we've done last time, many times by now, and kind of name my remote origin and add the remote path. Click done. Let's do a small commit. I'm going to go to do a commit, where I'm going to say this is my initial commit. I kind of push it to my remote here. And I'm going to log in. Once I've done that, it'll push everything up to the remote, and we're good to go. All right, so we've got version control going. We're ready to go, and I want to create a small notifier application. All this is going to do when we do notifications is I'm going to generate a notification, right, as an example. And what we're going to do with it, we're going to see it, first of all, come up outside of our app. That's by the default. And then we're going to use an app delegate to see notifications inside of our app, all right? Because otherwise, in old versions of iOS, you couldn't do a notification in-app. Now you can, right? So let's continue. One of the things that you notice, we haven't talked about this too much, is the display name. And sometimes what we want to do here, and this is the app manifest, and this is kind of a foundational thing that you guys should know, you should have known from last semester, which is sometimes what happens is our display name is really ugly. And we want to call this something more interesting. Even though my application is MAPD124 blah, blah, blah. That doesn't look really good from an icon perspective, right? And you can call this whatever you want. Like, I don't know, maybe we'll call this notifier, right? Whatever. And you can call this whatever. This is what it will appear in your icon, right? So that's what's going to happen when it kind of runs. So I did that change. I'm going to go to our main storyboard, just to kind of add some controls, basic controls that we're going to add in. I want to have some kind of label that welcomes the user. So we'll go label, very basic stuff. Thank you. Drag it in. I'm going to, this label that I'm dragging in, I'm going to say, you know, welcome to Notifier. Notifier, that's what it does. It's a notifier app, right? And we're going to change the system font to Title 1, right? So make it kind of bigger, make this a little bigger so we can see what it is. Welcome to Notifier. Make it a little bigger. There we go. And I'm just going to center it with the guides here right now. Just welcome Notifier. And then what I want to add is a couple of buttons. I want to have a button to create a message, check for messages that haven't been sent yet, or like, you know, pending messages, and messages that have been received. All right, so this is that's all I want to do today. All right, so show me the message, show me the messages that are waiting to come into the queue, show me the messages that we've already received. Something very simple. All right, so a few buttons. Let's add some buttons. Right, so we're going to have a button in there, and in the button, the first button, we're going to say send a message. Right, send a message. We'll say, actually, we'll call it notification. That's really what it is. So send a notification. We'll copy this button a couple times. So copy, paste a couple times. So we'll check pending notifications and check, what notifications are received. I think those things we have to check, right? And it's not that big of a deal when we do this kind of stuff. So kind of delivered. So we're going to put these buttons underneath each other like this. So instead of send a notification here, this one here. By the way, we'll just change. If I want to change multiple things, so I'm looking at 3 buttons here, and I want to center them all, basic things. I want to change my fonts, let's say, to, I don't know, title 2, make it a little differently. Reset the size of these things. And this one here, instead of sending it, we'll do a view pending notifications. So this will be, and this one will be delivered notifications. There we go. All right, so a few notifications. That's all we're doing here. So send in one, see what's pending, see what's delivered. Very simple. And we're just going to kind of select all these right now. And we're going to use a stack view, right? So I'm going to click on this little stack view, embed a stack, done, right? There we go. And what I want to do with this one is I want to click on the little pin, right? When this is kind of running up, right? So if you see I'm looking at the stack view, I've got that selected and I've got my pin. And I want to alignment, we'll say fill this whole thing up. And, distribution, we'll say fill equally. So we can fill everything up, right? That's that part. What I want to do with the little pin is I want to say something like, 20 from the top. Or maybe we'll make it more. We'll make it 40 from the top, 40 from the top. So it's kind of in the middle. 40 from the bottom. And then maybe, I don't know, 10 from the sides. And we'll add the 4 constraints. There we go. Nice and nice like. And if I want to make this welcome to notifier centered, I can center that too. Hey, little notification. So a few buttons. Nothing crazy. So what I want to do now is I want to hide this part, and just to create my little UI here, I want to create my, I want to go here, hide this one, and maybe hide this one. Have a little bit more real estate on the screen. And what I want to do is I want to create my notifications. And in order for me to do that and receive notifications inside my app, I need to import a new library, right? So the first thing I want to do up here is import user notifications. So we have to do that. Okay. And what this will allow us to do is interact with the user notifier method. Have you guys done user notifications at all? In the first half at all or anything? No? Yes? No? Good. All right. So this should be new for you. I don't care about did receive memory warning, so I'm going to get rid of that just to give us some space. And I'm going to just clear this comment so we see more stuff here. And I really don't need this much, other than I want to drag these 3 buttons inside of here as actions. Okay, so I want to kind of do one at a time. So I'm going to make some room so we can have some room for the actions. So I'm going to take the send a notification button, control drag in here, make it an action, change this to a UI button, and call this send a notification. And do the next one. So next one, control drag, put that in there, change this to an action, make it a button, and call this view pending notifications. Not really creative, but it is what it is. This is just for demonstration purposes, right? So that's why we're doing this thing. Again, we'll do the same thing, view, delivered, it's called delivered notifications. And let's make sure it's a button. Although that's not really that important. That's it. We got our 3 little functions as an example, right? We've got our framework is pretty much nice. We're ready to go. I'm going to build. I always like to build everything and make sure there's no issues, and there's no issues right now. Now, last week we did testing, so certainly we could have gone and done the testing pieces as well by creating unit tests for some of these things, but we're not going to do that today. All right, I'm going to close this part down, this little assistant. I'm going to go over and open up this part up over here, click on view controller.swift, and now we have to work on our view controller a little bit. I'll just get rid of our solution on the left, and we'll start putting stuff in here. But this is pretty much what I have. So again, all I did was just a recap is like I made a label, hello, right? A few buttons, and the buttons right now, all they're going to do is send a notification, view how many we have pending, and view deliver notifications after they're done, right? All right. So there's different kinds of notifications we can do. We can create a calendar type notification. Okay, that's one type. We can also do a notification that's kind of an instant notification, like right now. We can also make notifications that are based on your location. Right now, that's kind of out of scope of what we're doing today. But more or less, at the end of the day, if you're in a particular location, you can be notified based on your map location. Right? That's more of an involved thing. And maybe if we have time, we'll do that. I don't think so for next week because next week is the last class, right? And speaking of last class, before I go on, in terms of what we're talking about today, I'm talking about user notifications for part 1, and then I'll be talking about part 2 of the Unity, how to build a game with Unity for iOS. That part 2. All right. So I know that some people wanted strictly stay with iOS because this is what this course is about. But from the most part, one of the things we haven't had a chance to touch on this program is any kind of mobile application development for games. And that's why I'm bringing in this couple 1, part 2, part 3, part thing on Unity, how to develop things for iOS specifically with Unity. Okay, that's why I'm doing it. All right, so we want to be able to do these things, send notifications and everything else. But the first thing we got to do is we got to check to see if we have access. A lot of times we cannot simply, assume that the user will give us access to do, any kind of notifications. You have to ask permission, right? So one of the things we want to set up at the top of our view controller is the ability for us to, grant permission for notifications. So maybe we'll make a variable that, kind of something like, is like this one is granted permission. Let's call it is granted permission. Now you can call it whatever you like, but we're going to set this variable to false. So by default, the user doesn't have permissions, right? And what we want to do is we want to make sure that when we're doing things like, sending a notification, that the user has permission first. Okay, so we're going to say something like if is granted permission, right? If that's true, then go ahead. And we'll do that thing in here, right? So before we send a notification out, we need permission, right? That's part of our, the way that we do things, right? If you don't do that, what will end up happening is that if you try and submit something like that to Apple and you don't ask permission, right, it won't fly. Right? Just letting you know, you always have to ask permission for any kind of like notifications or other kinds of things where you access different parts of the device and so on. You need to ask permission, and it's part of our workflow with Apple. Okay, so one of the things we want to do here is inside of our view did load, right? We want to check to see if the user, is going to grant us permission, right, to use the notification. And to do that, we're going to use a class called, and here's where it starts off, UN. Now, because we've added that, we've imported notifications, right? User notifications. Notice this UNN. That's what the UN stands for, right? So when I start typing UN, that's user notification, right? And then it's user notification center, right? That's where we want to hit. Dot current. So the current user notification center, right? And then dot, we want to request authorization. Now there's two parts of this. There's one part that's basically going to say what kind of options you want. Do you want a badge? Do you want some kind of alert? Do you want a sound to go off when you get a notification? What do you want, right? And what we can do is we can set up an array, pretty much, of different options. One of them can be an alert, a dot alert. The other one we can set up is dot badge for that kind of notification. And then the other one, of course, is dot sounds, some kind of sound notification. So that's the options, right? And what happens, notice that this is a completion handler. A completion handler is a delegate, right? And it's almost like, think about it as an anonymous function in other languages. That's what it's like. And the way to skip out of this is if you double click this whole thing, double click, right? It actually creates your delegate like this, right? Notice that there's bool and error, right? So the first one is some kind of a Boolean. Did you grant permission? Did you get permission? We can call this, as an example, is granted, right? And then if you get an error, what do you do? So we're just going to call this error. So you need two variables, is granted. It's incoming. So when you do this, it's almost like your callback function in other language. If you're familiar with JavaScript, or if you're familiar with Java, then this will be your callback function, right? And it takes the place of almost like this closure that's going on right here, right? That's what this thing is. And you guys should have seen this syntax before. But basically what you want to do is inside of the closure, right? So inside of here, in the code portion where it says code, you want to do something like this. Self dot is granted permission. That's the variable we made, right? Is equal to is granted. Is granted means this is what's going to come in when the user accepts. His acceptance or denial is going to come into this variable right here. Is granted. Yes or no, true or false, right? Then we're going to pass the state of this variable back into our variable that's part of this view controller. We just named is granted permission. You can call it whatever you like. Well, basically this is the user. Whatever the user does is going to be recorded here into our variable, right? And then when we check it up here, we can check if we've got permission or not. That's what this does. Now, iOS will only ask you once. If you say no, you have to go into your settings and basically turn notifications on, right? Otherwise, if you say yes, it's going to remember that as well. And we can also make a condition, and I'm not going to code this, but if you wanted to, what if it's not is granted, right? What if you don't? What if you get that as a denial, right? Well, then you kind of, some kind of, display an error of some sort, right? Display an error, or a message, maybe a message that lets the user know that they're not getting any notifications until they turn it on. That's kind of a little bit of pseudocode there. So we're not going to, if you say no, you're not going to receive any notification. What's going to happen? We can actually test this right now the way it is. And if you actually press, Command V to build, you can first of all check to see if it's built. You can run it locally, right? And one of the things that'll happen is when this application runs, and why did I run it with iPhone 7 Plus? I don't know, but we'll run it again. It will, when it actually runs physically in the simulator, it'll ask you, right? Let's see if it does that. So as soon as the application runs, right, it should ask you, hey, would you like, to send a notifier would like to send you notifications. Do you agree? And if you say allow, right, then you're good to go. Or if you say no, never going to work until they turn it on. Right? All right, now this doesn't really do anything. These buttons right now, they don't do a darn thing. I'm just going to kind of make it so our window scale, for example, is it's not that bad. We can see all the buttons. That's good enough. So now we got to program this send a notification thing. But before we do, I'm going to stop debugging, and I'm going to go to source control, and I'm going to add a new commit, right? Just to kind of drive that home. I'm going to say something like added, added request for permission to view controller. And we're going to push to the remote and commit 3 files and push. There we go. So you have that update. Cool. So again, step 1, ask for permission. If they give you permission, you can go ahead and start, notifying them, right? All right, what we want to do now is we want to, if you've got permission, right, we have to do something like this. The notification itself, there's a couple things we can set up. It has a couple of properties. One of them is the title. So let's say, for example, we make a notification. It's just a little message, right? It's going to say, Tom wants to talk to you, right? That might be the title of it, whatever, right? And you can make, and then there's the body. And usually before, back in the day, that's all there was. Title and the body of your notification. And that's it. Nowadays, you can put messages, images, you can put movies, you can put all kinds of stuff in there. We're not going to talk about those things. All I want is a simple message to come out to you, right? By the way, we're also not talking about push notifications. Push notifications will be coming from some kind of server, and if you want to use something like the server, the kind of server that you built with Victor last semester, so a little microservice that does push notifications, right? That's a perfect way of doing things. That you can have push notifications that comes right to your app, and as long as you accept those, that works perfectly. But we're not going to be talking about that today. It's just in-app notifications. What I want to do here is we want to kind of set content, right, of the notification. Now, there's a couple ways we can do this. We can set the content directly, right? And the way to do that would be to use something called a UN, so a user notification, mutable notification content. That's what it's called. It's a really long class, right? So this is one way we do. We're going to do it a couple of different ways here. So one of the ways is we can say let content is equal to this new object, which is UN mutable notification content. Now this is an object, and once we have an object, we can add different properties to this object, right? So I can add things like the title. So if I go to content, I can go content.title, right? And we can call this whatever you want. For example, new notification. We'll just call it new notification with an exclamation mark. So I know it's me. I'm sending it, right? And then maybe my content.body, right? Here's my content.body. And then we'll say, some kind of body that we want to put in. For example, here is the body of your notification. Remember, this can be whatever makes sense for you to notify the user, right? By the way, I love notifications because sometimes what ends up happening is if something is complete, you do something, you add something to a server, you want to get a response, a positive response back from something like Firebase, notification, bam, right? It comes up and says, hey, everything went well, right? Notification is perfect for that, right? It's better than a message or some kind of alert that comes up. All right, so now, once we've got the message, the content itself, right? Then what we need to do is we need to somehow be able to send it, and we do that with a trigger, okay? We do that with a trigger. And usually we're going to use this, we're just going to use a time interval. So again, there's two types. There's the calendar, right? And there's the time interval. We're going to use the time interval one, okay? Because the calendar is, we need to use the calendar. I want to make this as simple as possible. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a new trigger, right? We're going to call it trigger, right? And we're going to call this UN time interval notification trigger. Woof. Crazy big names, right? And if I open this up, there's two constructors here. There's the first one and the second one. The second one is what we want, the time interval, and if it repeats or not, right? So I'm going to choose this one. The time interval in seconds before they get the notification. Okay, so let's suppose that my notification is going to take me how many seconds? 3? I'll put 3 seconds in there. After 3 seconds, you're going to get notified, right? And does it repeat or not? And we're going to say false. Only one time. So first of all, what we've done here, we've created a content object, and we've created our trigger, okay? Now, we want to be able to add the notification to the notification center, right? And for this, I think it's important for us because we're going to do more than one notification, and we're going to do it over and over again. Maybe we're going to make another function to do this, maybe with the calendar, right? So instead of us doing it manually, maybe what we want to do here is, you know, create a method later. But for now, what I want to try and do is do it locally. So that's so again, object. So step 1, let's put this in. Step 1, right? Create a content object. Okay. Step 2, create a trigger object. Right? So a trigger means when does it happen? What's going into it? When does it happen? That's the second part. All right. All right, step 3. I can spell create too. That would be really great. Okay. So the next part is creating a request object. And the request object is actually going to be the container for the request, right? That's what it's going to be, right? So I'll say container for the notification request. That's really what it is at the end of the day, right? So we're going to say let request. Notice that the names are exactly what they would be for content, trigger, and request, right? If the request is equal to a UN notification request, right? Woo! UN time interval notification trigger, UN mutable notification content, and UN notification request, right? And we're going to pass in, we're going to choose the second constructor over here, and we're going to pass in for identifier. We can pass in a custom identifier for our requests. Okay, so let's say for now, our identifier, you know, and again, this is, you know, our message, right? And then some kind of content. So for example, our, I don't know, we'll call it message. Here's our identifier. And then dot new, our new message. There's our identifier. And our content, well, what we're going to pass in there is content, right? And our trigger, right? Our trigger, right? Because it's waiting for a trigger. Notice content and trigger. It's waiting for content and trigger. I'm just passing in this stuff here, content and trigger. I'm passing it into the request. The request is the container object, right? It houses everything, formats everything properly until we add it to the notification center. Okay. All right, cool. Last part. Step 4, right? After we've got our notification, we've got our content, our trigger and request objects. Now we've got to access the user notification center, and we've got to add the request. It's almost like I'm adding the request to that center, right? This is where I'm actually sending it. So I'm going to add the request to the notification center. Okay, so the way it works is I'm going to say UN user notification center dot current, right, dot add, and we're going to pass in a request. That's what we're passing in. And what we're going to do here is I want to create a delegate for this where we're passing in an error. Okay. And what I want to say is if there's an error, right, and if it's not equal to nil, somehow there's an error that's not equal to nil, then what I want to kind of put out is some kind of error adding notification. We want to kind of, listen for that. So error adding notification, just in case there's an error. That's it. This will add a notification. Now, here's the problem. It will not appear in your app right now because your app needs a delegate. So we're going to have to test for this notification outside of the app, where it's only going to happen in the notification center, right? I'll wait till this is done, and then we'll test it. Let me know when you're done. Now, the identifier is interesting. It allows you to identify each of your messages separately so that you can see what type of message you're sending. Let's say I might have several different kinds of messages I want to send, like different categories of message. I can start categorizing them to some degree in the identifier. Not too much, just to give us an idea of what this message is. Are you ready? All right, so now we're going to save and build. Let's see if it actually builds out. We're good. So no errors there. And what I want to do now is test this out. Now remember, when I do this, I want to come here, build our app, and when it launches, right, if everything goes well, I want to send a notification, right? But once I do that, I want to close my app. So I'm going to press Control-Shift-H and wait for a few seconds to see if it comes up, right? 1, 2, 3, it should be up now if everything went well. And if it did, it'd be up here, the notification. If everything went well, right? To pull down your notification to check if there's any notifications, you can pull it down, right? And there it is. I just missed it, right? Here's the body of your notification. It actually came into the notification center, right? Now I can get rid of it by kind of swiping to the right or clicking this this X here, and I can clear the notifications. Let's show you that again. So if I go back, I can go back to notification, send a notification out, Command-Shift-H to go back out. There it is. It came up, right? And then I can swipe it out. I can swipe this notification so it goes away. So that's what notifications are. They're just little messages that come up, and your app can send that off. Even when you're in a lock screen perspective, you can do that. Let's give it a little bit more. We'll stop this one. And instead of giving us 3 seconds, let's give us some more time. Because right now, our interval is really fast, like 1, 2, 3, and it's happening. Let's give us like 10 seconds. All right, and then we'll put it into the lock screen and see how that works. Okay, so I'm going to run this thing again, right? And as soon as it comes up and builds, here it is. I'm going to send a notification, and this time I'm going to press Command-L, where I lock the actual app itself, right? So let's see what happens. Like, do we actually get anything here? You know, timer or whatever. Yeah, there it is, right? So in the app screen, the lock screen, you're going to get a notification. Say, hey, by the way, here's my message, right? Notice that my app comes up that says notifier because that's what I put in, right? It doesn't say, you know, MAPD124, blah, 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 right? Because that's what I changed my manifest. Otherwise, it's going to be too big. All right, let's go back. So I'm going to Command-Shift-H again to come back in. All right, so I can send a notification off, and I can send more than one, right? Did it work for you? No? Fast. You have to go into your, you can't, it doesn't work inside your app. It only works outside of your app right now, right? Because remember, we have to give ourselves, we have to make our view controller a delegate to receive notifications, right? Otherwise, it will never work inside your app. You have to leave your app and go outside of your app to do that. So let me show you this again. So I make a notification, send. Let's send a couple of them, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then Shift-H, Command-Shift-H. And what happens is I've sent a bunch of notifications off now, and they're going to each happen in 10 seconds, right? There's one, right? The first one comes, if you give it a second, right? And if I don't clear it, the next one's going to come up, and the next one's going to come up, and the next one's going to come up, and they're going to keep happening. And to check all your notifications, right? If I look at the top, right, here's my notification. All right, it's in my notification center. New notifications. All right. All right, so we've made a notification trigger, and I'll come around after in the break, and I'll check to make sure it works. Now it works somehow. It didn't work before. You thought it, well, you couldn't wait long enough, is what it was, right? Okay. And so this is pretty cool. I mean, it's very simple, right? But it gives you notification. Remember, you can send all kinds of information in your notifications, right? Right now, all we're saying is text, which is kind of cool, but we should send other kind of things as well. All right, so let's go back to our app. We'll stop debugging. We'll go back into source control, and we'll go into making a new commit, and we'll say added simple notification, right? But this is outside of the app, outside app, right? Because that's all it does. It doesn't do a notification inside the app. So we'll commit and push. Now what I want to do is I want to set up a way of setting up our notifications inside the app, right? In order for us to do that, we need to set the app up as a user notification center delegate, okay? Because in order for us to do this, remember, it won't receive, it has to act as a delegate, the middleman between getting the notifications, right? Because right now, what's our delegate? What's the delegate by default for this app, right? The app delegate, which is the actual window, right? The window itself. I don't want the window to be the delegate. I want, for this user notification system, I want this app to be the delegate for its own notifications, right? Which means it's going to receive its own notifications as long as it's open, right? So if I go back up where we have our view controller up on the top here, where it says UI view controller, I'm going to add comma, and I'm going to add this as a UN user notification center delegate, this one. Okay. So there's UI view controller for view controller, and it's also a UN user notification center delegate. Now, in order for us to set it up as the to finish the setup for the delegate, the only thing we need to do here, right? There's a couple of things we need to do, but let's go in here. First of all, right, I'm going to scroll down to view did load again, because this is when the application loads, we want to set the delegate as itself. So we're going to say something like UN user notification center delegate, right? Actually, user notification center dot current dot delegate self, which means, hey, use this app itself as the, or this view controller as the user notification center delegate. The delegate, remember, it's just saying, hey, I want to receive notifications. I don't want you to send it to the window only. I want to receive them also here. And the next part is we need to kind of have a notification function, right? Which we're going to use something called will present notification. We actually have to have the delegate function in the bottom here. So below the, remember, because once we add that protocol in there, right, that it's a delegate, this is a protocol up here, right? Once we add this protocol in place, we need to have at least one of the delegate functions in there. So what we're going to call this is our delegate area. We can have more than one delegate in here. Maybe we only have one right now. And one of the delegates that we're going to use is a function that we're going to call user notification center. And you can see that there's two, right? Well, the one we want is the second one, which is the present notification. Is that the one will present? That's response. Did I choose the right one? That's not the right one. With completion handler, UN notification response. I do not think I chose the right one. Let's just get rid of that one. You got to choose the right one or else it's bad, right? So it's going to be func user notification center. And you want the one with with the proper version, or else you're not going to get the right thing. Let me see that. Did receive response. Let's do the other one. Put both of them in there. Func. User notification center. Will present. I want this one. Let's get rid of this one. I want the one that says will present. Because this will present notification is the one we want, right? And in our completion handler, which is after we do UI notification presentation options, void, this part here, right? This part. So inside where it says code, right here, we're going to just change this to the ability for us to get alerts. That's what we're going to be doing here, right? So our completion handler. So, and again, this is, if you notice, there's a large bit of code here, but all we need to do here in the code area is we'll say completion handler, and we'll specify that it is an array that's going to give us the same kind of alerts we got before, which is a badge, a sound, and an alert. So again, we need the function. What we're doing is we're accessing the function so that way we can comply with the notification. So we have with the delegate protocol, right? To comply with the delegate protocol, we need at least one. Actually, I think we don't have to choose any, if I'm not wrong, if it's the way it was before, right? And but we're just choosing the thing is we'll present. We're going to present the notification. What is the notification? Whatever the notification we receive. Whatever it is we're going to receive, and we're going to accept all those types of notifications. Badges, alerts, sounds, the whole thing. All right? All right, cool. With this in place, just this part right here, we can test it locally now, and we should receive the notification inside the app. So if I run this thing now, and if I click on the app, send a notification. If we wait a few minutes, a few seconds, if I scroll up, because we want to be able to see the notification, our app is a little bit big, right? Then we should receive the notification inside the top. There it is now, right? Of your app. And every time I click the button, if I click another send notification or another one, or another one, or another one, right? Then we should see the notification pop up on the top as well without any crashes happening. Right, again, it's going to happen after 10 seconds, right? There's that again. And then it'll go away by itself. Again, if you want to check your notifications, if there's any notifications, it'll be up here, right? And we're good to go. Yay, April 11th. Okay, so Command-Shift-H for going back to your code. There it is. So that's the basics. The basics are how to send a notification. Let's go back to that code a little bit, right? Again, all we have here is you need to create the content, right? And by the way, there's lots. This content object has tons and tons of properties, right? So if you actually look at the content for a second, if I go content dot, man, it has different attachments, titles, user info, where you can send in different kinds of user info, all kinds of other stuff that you can attach, different attachments. It's amazing what they've given us now. Well, we didn't have that before. All right, now how do I check? First of all, let's put it up on GitHub. So I'm going to go to commit, and I'll say, So we'll say something like notifications working in app. Say remote, commit file, one file and push. And that's that part, because we added it as a delegate. All right, cool. So we've got that part working. Everything's great. And what I want to try and do now is I want to check to see, remember we have the other buttons to make work. We have the view pending notifications, and I also have the view delivered notifications, right? So we can check. Let's do the view delivered notifications first, because the view pending notifications may not work exactly as I want them to work right now. So in here, in the view delivered notifications, when it's delivered, I want to go UN user notification center. We're going to access the notification center again, dot, right? And we're going to say current, the current notification center. And we're going to say get delivered notifications, right? Just like we did last time, we're going to have this little anonymous function here that we're going to double click, right? What I'm going to put in here, right, is the notifications that have been received. So we're going to double click here. I'm going to change the name of the stuff in the brackets. You can make it more than one, an array of notifications. We're just going to call it notifications, right? I'm going to put this on the next line so you can see it a little easier, right? And what I want here is when we get a notification, whatever it is, when it's delivered, let's put it out to the console. So we're going to say something like, well, kind of the date of the notification. We'll kind of print that out. So we'll say the date of the notification. We'll show that, whatever the date time is. And some kind of, you know, the notification or whatever it is, right? So whatever the notification is, right, I want to kind of show the number of notifications that were delivered, right? So let's say the notifications.counts delivered. How many notifications that were delivered to us? Let's try that out first and see what it does. So again, remember that the syntax we're using here, right, is this is a anonymous function equivalent. It's almost like a little closure. And all we're doing here is we're saying, hey, when we check for delivered notifications, trigger this function, this callback function right here, this anonymous callback function right here, that basically sends a note to the console that says, hey, for this date time, this is the notification count that we've delivered so far, right? We actually don't see the body or anything like this. All we're seeing is the number of messages. Okay, let's check this out, see if it works. So run it. And I'm going to send a notification. And I'm going to check it immediately. How many delivered notifications? And if you notice immediately, we see that there's 0 delivered, right? None. But as soon as we receive a notification up here, there's 1, right? If I go back to view delivered notifications again, you see that I've got 1 that was delivered. All right, so this checks to see if the notification was delivered, right? So send a notification, right? If I say view delivered notifications, I still only have 1 until I get the next one. There it is. Then if I click it again, right, view delivered notifications, I see I'm only got 1. So it's only really receiving 1 at a time at this point, because I only have 1 sender. The only thing I have sending is 1 button that sends a notification all the time, right? And I can send 1 notification at a time at this point. Okay, very cool. So that's what this part does. But what if I have more than 1 notification? I want to kind of, for every notification that I have, I want to show the detail. So how do I do that? I could say something like we'll do a little for loop, for notification, in notifications, little for each, right? We're going to print the notification dot requests dot identifier, let's say. And so we'll do that. So whatever the identifier is, right? And we'll also give me the body as well. So notification dot requests dot content dot body. We'll close that up. So we're saying is here is, okay, whatever the notification is, the identifier, show me the identifier, right? Because now we don't see what the message is right now. We just know there's one that's been delivered. Show me the body of the message, whatever the body is. Okay, let's see if this works. Just gonna run it. I'm gonna send a message, right? And then see that it comes in after a few seconds, 10 seconds. There it is. And now when I come in, I can see what's been delivered. And now it says one delivered message dot new. This is the identifier. Here is the body of your notification. That's what's coming in. So you can see the body of your notification. There's only one of them, right? By the way, if I do it again, send a notification, and then I wait till the notification comes in. See how it says one delivered, right? It's always going to say one delivered, right? Because, and even if I get another one, right? Do you deliver notifications, right? One delivered, same exact thing. But what if I can keep track of how many messages I've sent? How do I do that kind of thing? I want to be able to add to the identity, the identifier of my message, so that every time I send a message, it adds something to the identifier. This part right here, message.new, where it says inside of my, just drop this for a second. Inside of my send a notification function, right, where I do this message, this identifier right here. It'd be nice if we could send another little identifier to kind of tell us what the number is, right? In order for us to do this, the right thing to do is kind of, set up a variable at the top of our view controller that keeps track. So we'll call this notification number. Notification number, right? We'll set to 0. Notification number, notification, if I can spell properly. So we set up a variable notification number, and then when we add a notification, now this is just a string, right? So what I could do is just kind of put in a dot and then slash and then notification number, right? So we can add the notification number in there. Well, for now, our notification is 0, right? Because that's what it starts off at. So 0, right? We can add that in. But what I want to do is every time we send a notification, as soon as it's sent correctly, if the request went without an error, no errors, right? As an example. Then, so if there's an error, then do this. Else, what if there's no error, right? So error is the thing we're passing into our request. But what if there's no error, right? Can I increase my notification message? Can I do that? Well, I got to use self notification number plus equal to 1. I need to use self because I'm inside of a closure. And in the closure, it doesn't know anything about anything outside unless I say self specifically. So that points to the view controller itself. All right, let's see if that works. So I'm going to run it. Send a notification. I'll check to see that it comes in. And when I get it, after a few seconds, I'll check to see my delivered notifications. And it says message.new.0 Here's the body of your notification, message.new. Uh-oh. What happened? Well, it says message.new.0. That's what happened there, right? That's the identifier. Where do we show the identifier, right? Because remember, we did the identifier here. We passed in the identification message, right? The identifier got passed in. So number.0, right here, it worked, right? But then when we checked it, when I actually started reading it, which is from here, right? When I did my notification request identifier, it didn't come out, right? Let's see what happens if I send it again. So if I send another one, right? And when we receive it, remember this is 0. And if I say view delivered notifications, now you can see that I've viewed notification number 1. If I can bring this up a little higher. There it is. So there's my number 1, the body of my notification, right? Another one. If I keep clicking this, though, it's going to show me the 1. It's going to repeat this. That's why it's doing this over and over again. It's going to keep track of my notifications, right? So I've sent 3 delivered notifications. They're all different, right? And if I send another one now, there's 4 where I have 0, 1, and 2. Keeps track of all my notifications, and each of them are different. All right, so this keeps track of notifications that have been delivered. But what about the notifications that are pending, if I have more than one? Because it keeps track of those too. The notification center keeps track of all notifications that are sent to it in a queue. Remember, we're doing an interval of 10 seconds. So I can load up the queue with a bunch of messages, and after 10 seconds, it'll come up, right? And after we do this, we'll stop. I think it's enough for you guys to use for your apps. All right, so send a notification. This is cool. We've checked. What we've done here is we can view pending notifications now. So what I want to do here is use source control, make another commit. So added view pending notifications functionality. We'll commit and push. And now we'll fix this view. Oh, actually, we did delivered, not pending. Meh, I did the wrong update. That's okay. So again, what I want to do is see all my pending notifications, and it's kind of the same thing. We're going to say, see how this you see this thing right here, how we did it for the delivered. Let's do it for the pending. So UN user notification center, right? Dot current. Same thing we did before. And instead of get delivered, we want to get pending. And just like we did before, we want to double click on this part to create our little stub of code. And this time we're going to get a bunch of requests. So we're going to call it request list. That's what this thing is. And in here, just like we did before, we're going to say, I'm going to put this down to put this part, just put it on the next line so you guys can see it properly, down here. So in my request list, what I want to say is something like this. I want to print the date of the request. Say date. And there's my date. And we'll do something like the request list count. So how many requests we got. So these are the requests pending, right? Do that. Just like we did before, we'll just skip a step and we'll say for request in request list. We'll do a little for each loop. We'll print off the request identifier, right? That's the request identifier. And then the body of the identifier will be there as well. So we'll say here's the body. We'll put in the request dot content of body. Of course, we'll end that off with a little quotation. What this will do is keep track of, we're using there's two different methods we're using here. This is getting delivered notifications, and this is how many notifications are pending, and this is get pending notification requests. So remember, whenever I make a notification request, doesn't mean it's going to happen. I'm making a request of the UN User Notification Center object, right? I make a request, and then after the request has been fulfilled, we're sending the request object. The request object is going to have three parts, right? Two parts: the content, right, and the trigger. So here's my content. It's almost like a package, a payload, right? And then I'm going to have my trigger. What happens when I receive the content? When do you want the notification request to happen, right? So here we're actually saying, hey, give me the pending notification requests. Tell me how many there are. So I'm going to save that, and I'm going to run it. And now this time I'm going to send a bunch of notifications. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And let's look at view pending notifications. Notice that it says, here's the body of my notifications, right? 5 requests pending. 5 requests pending. So I pressed that button a bunch of times, right? And if you notice, I'm getting my notifications now one after the other, right? They're going away. And then I can check to see how many were delivered. So here's 6 delivered, right, so far. By the way, notice it keeps track, right? Keeps track. So if I check it again, you delivered. There's 6 delivered. If I send another couple notifications, 1, 2. Notice I have 2 requests that are pending, right? And these are the requests, 5 and 6, right? And then I can check to see if they're delivered. Here's 5 and 6. 8 total delivered. Okay. Let's close this off. Let's go to source control, and we'll do a commit. And we'll say added view pending notifications. All right, questions about basic notifications, anybody? Lots of really cool ways to use them, and I've really just scratched the surface here for you guys. It's just, how do I make little notifications? And these are in-app notifications, local notifications. They're not push notifications, right? And if you want to challenge yourself, you can also create a calendar type notification where you can set up a calendar event, right? Something to happen in the future, right? Like, for example, tomorrow, I want to set up a little event. This is great for a clock app. I want to set up a clock app, and I want it to make noise or whatever, right? I can do that. And if I was going to program that out a little differently, right? Instead of the way I've done my notification here, which is local, this part, send a notification. This is kind of like instant, right? In a time interval, 10 seconds, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. You can also do this for games, right? Let's say, for example, you're playing a game where you're doing a resource game, resource management kind of game, right? And for example, you know what? Your resource is finished building. You ever play those kind of games where you build like a plant or some kind of thing, and then, hey, guess what? I got my gold. My dwarves in the game were digging gold, and they found some gold. I notify you after the gold is done, right? This is the kind of stuff that it can do. The app can run in the background and notify you in the foreground, right? Which is kind of cool. But you can also set up a notification that happens in the future, right? Like an alert, right? Some kind of other kind of notification. Now, for us to do that, we're going to have to modify our app a little bit. So let's do that just really quickly. So how do I modify the app? Well, I need to have another button, right? Because right now we only have these 3 buttons: send a notification, view pending notifications, and view deliver notifications, right? All right, now we have a bit of an issue, right? Because we added this in the stack view, right? Not a big issue, small issue. And I want to add another button, right, in my stack view. So what I want to do is, instead of sending a notification, right, we want to send up a calendar event. That's what we want to kind of put together, some kind of a scheduled notification. So we want to kind of go in here, and I want to copy and paste, right? And the second button, there's two buttons now, send a notification and this one. And I want to say, we'll say schedule a notification. That's this part right here. Now, one thing is, because I've copied and pasted, I want to make sure that there isn't any, like both of these events kind of tie up to the same action. And I want to kind of kill this second one, this one here, to make its own. So I want to kill this one. Right, so this one has an action. There it is. This one doesn't. My schedule notification. So I'm adding in another button. So not a big deal, but I just wanted to show you where the differences were. That's where the quote-unquote trouble might have been. There's no real trouble. And what I want to do here is, just like we did before, I want to go back into our assistant. And at the top where we have our IB actions, we send a notification. I want to make another one for schedule a notification. That's the new one. Okay, so just like we did up here, in here where we did this part, I want to control drag over here to make another button. We're going to make this another action, make it a button, and we're going to call this schedule. Schedule a notification. There we are. That's our new function. Now we can get rid of this, go back over here, and go to my view controller. We can see this part. Okay, now we've got some duplication happening, because think about this. I'm going to do the same things. I'm going to do the content. I'm going to do the trigger. I'm going to do the request, and I'm going to notify. Lots of duplication, and this lends it to splitting this off and refactoring. Now, up until this point, right, I've done it on my own, and because you guys are all here, I want you to help me. Classes here, so I think we're more comfortable with Swift than we were in the beginning when we first started to this thing together this semester, right? So I'm going to build this other function out, and I'm going to start building it, and then afterwards I want to refactor with you guys. So one of the exercises we're going to do together is, how do I refactor my application? What would you do? I want to get feedback from you guys to see what I'm going to do here, okay? But let's talk about what this is. First, just like I did before, because I'm scheduling a notification, it's still a notification. I got to check to see if I've got access, right? So I'm going to say if is granted permission, right? If is granted permission, that's true. Then and only then can I create my content, right, as equal to the UN mutable notification content. This is step one. Remember that? And then we're going to set up the content. Here's our content, title. And we'll say that content.title is some kind of, here's a scheduled message or notification. Whatever that scheduled notification is, just to make it different, right? And then the content body is going to also be different. We're going to call this the, some scheduled content. Scheduled content. We'll say goes here, a little bit longer. Right? You can put whatever you want in there. All right? All right. So this is part one, just like we did up here, right? So step one, we create a content object, right? And that's what we've done here. Step one, create a content object. Yay. Okay, step two. Normally what we would do is we want to create some kind of trigger, right? Create a trigger. But the problem is here that we don't just want to set up a trigger. Our trigger is slightly different than before. There's two types of triggers. The trigger that we created up here, right? which is a UN time interval notification trigger, right? And this one is going to be a different kind of trigger. It's going to be a UN calendar notification trigger, right? This is where the difference is between the schedule notification and the other one, the other type that we did before, right? Now, for this, because we want to keep it simple, right? The recommendation is before we do this, there's a middle step where we say, you know, we're going to call this the units. We're going to kind of set up the units. So we'll say you let units, right? We'll make a unit set, which is going to be this is where it's a little bit more complicated. A calendar dot component. Here's my calendar component set, right? Which is equal to, again, we're going to mention them as dot minute, right? Dot hour and dot second. If we don't set this up, we're going to set this up later on. So we're just setting up our units, right? Call them calendar units or whatever you want to call them later on. The other thing we want to do is we want to set up a date, right? A date object, right? Because we're using a calendar. And what we're going to do here is we're going to say calendar dot current, right? Dot date components. And we're going to pass in, of course, our units, right? That's the unit that's got to go in there. And it's going to be from date, right? So we'll say date, capital date, right? Whatever the date is of today. Okay, now let's say I want to set it up so that the new event is going to be whatever the date is, right? In seconds, right? Which is equal, it's going to be equal to date dot second again. And we'll say plus 10 again. All right, so whatever the current date is, I want to schedule it out. And I just got to unwrap it here for a second. I want to schedule it out 10 seconds in the future. That's what this thing is, right? So first I got to set up my units, right? Whatever the units is, minute, hour, and second, right? Then I got to set up a date object. So it's really, this is really step 3 now. And this is step 2. Step 2, set up your calendar object. That's what we're really doing here. We're setting up a calendar or a date, you know, or the timer, if you will, the calendar slash, you know, date object. And then after we've got this going on, then we do the trigger. This is the difference. We say let trigger, just like we did before, is equal to a new UN calendar notification trigger, different kind of trigger this time around, right? Where we do we want to use this one, date matching. And this is where the date components come into place, right? Where my date components, my date matching is of date. That's the date that I want to match. Repeats is going to be false, right? Okay, so here's our trigger. So what is this doing? Date matching. So I set up my date, the actual date. Now you can actually use a little control to pull that up, a little date control. So the user can choose the date. Right now I'm setting a date of 10 seconds, right? But maybe what we can do is in our app, we can set it up so that whatever I choose in the little control for my date time, I can choose what the date is going to be, right? In our calendar. And then I pass in that data in the date matching property of the UN calendar notification trigger. So whatever that date is, it's going to match that date, and then it's going to trigger the notification based on that date. That's why it's called a trigger. Cool. Now that I've got that, we're going to go on to step 4, which is just like we did up here, right? Add the request to the notification center. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take this whole thing here, just like we did before, and I'm going to just copy it back in here. Remember I talked about refactoring? I need your help, right? So here's the request, right? I don't have a request yet, and I want to do this piece. This is step 4. And really, it's not even that. That's like step 5. Sorry. This piece. I don't even have step Step 4 is this piece, where I create my request. This is all the same, right? So I'm going to kind of grab this part and go over here. And you can see I'm duplicating step 4, which is step 4 will be create the request objects. Right? To contain, the notification. And that's what this part is. And then, of course, the other one is the add the notification to the notification center. So this is the exact same, right? So, I wonder what we can do here to make this a little easier, right? Here's my identifier message.new, and then just like I did before, notification number. So whatever the notification number is here. So it's still going to have the same style, and I'm still going to do this. That's a lot of duplication we got going on here, right? Lots and lots. All right, let's test this thing out. And you guys got this? Margot, you good? So the only difference is here, what we did differently in this one is this one, set up your calendar date object, which we have to set up. Look, what is the calendar? And by the way, like I said in here, if you're the programmer, let's say you have a designer. The designer may choose to use a calendar object inside of your storyboard, where you can choose what you want. The user can choose the date, right? And then you'd rewrite this so that way it would receive the date that the user selected. Right now we're just choosing a date that's this, we're actually adding 10 seconds to the current time. We're saying, hey, go 10 seconds in the future and schedule that. That's going to be the scheduled time, right? But notice we normally would set up a time, a date or a time that we want to access. Like for example, 12 hours in the future. So instead of like date.second plus 10, you can say date.second, or date.hour plus 10. 10 hours in the future, 1 hour in the future, whatever you want. And of course, you don't want to hard code it like this. You want to get it from a control. All right, so let's see if this works. So we're going to go here and press play. And we're going to have a new button on our user interface, hopefully. Here's schedule a notification now. So that's in 10 seconds from now. All right. So I'm going to click that, and I'm going to click this. Right. Let's see what happens. Let's see my view pending notifications. Right. So let's see them. Let's see these. I got one request pending. Right. Oh, new notification. Here's the body of your notification. Yay. Right. What happened to my schedule? Said I want to schedule my events. How about now? Oh, there's a bunch of them. I just scheduled these 9 requests, right? And then, if everything goes well, oh, look at there. Here we go. You have 5 new notifications, right? Woo! Here they come. And they're coming one after the other, right? Now you can see which ones I've received. These are all the ones I received, right? And there's the ones, so they're different kinds. Here's the scheduled ones, and here's the other regular kind, the different kinds. All right, this worked, right? So we can send a notification, we can schedule a notification. Those are the 2 types of notifications we're talking about today, right? Let us stop this, and we'll put it up on source controls. We'll say commit, and added scheduling. Scheduled notifications. Functionality. Hit and push. Okay, this is where I need your help, guys and girls. Right, there's 2 girls in the class. Maybe I can get some help from them. Right, I don't know. But what I need from you is, we got a lot of duplication in here, and I want to give recommendations on what to do. Right now, if you take a look at my code up on GitHub, I've got send notification, and I've got this schedule notification. There's 2 types and I want help. This is a very easy exercise. What would you do? How would you set this up? And what can we use? What can we kind of pull out of here to make it more efficient? And what would you leave in place? Anybody? Just take a look at my code. You have to look at it. Yeah, okay, you can go. You don't have to be. It doesn't have to be a girl that answers. Go ahead. Yeah. Let the girls answer. Okay. Margot, he's challenging you. He says, let the girls answer. Huh? Well, I don't mind. I don't mind if the girls answer or if guys answer. I don't care who answers, right? But she's like, forget it. I don't want it. Jasmine, any recommendations? It's not a guys with a girl versus girl thing, by the way. There's no. I'm not trying to put them against. I'm not trying to put you guys against each other. Right? I'm saying there's like two girls in the class. Huh? Functions. Okay, but let's think about this. I like your thinking, but remember what we're doing. We're doing slightly different things for each one, right? Not the same. So this is the same, right? Should I need one function or should I use more than one function? Think about this. I got this part, which is kind of the same as this part, but a little different, right? And that's almost the same, right? So there's almost like I need to build content, right? Almost like add content, or my content object that I have right now it's the same object, right? But instead of us creating this thing here, I want to add my title and my body separately. And so I could do that there, right? Could. So what is my function going to be called? I want to make my function up here, right? So what's my function going to be called? Add content. All right, sure. Add content. Right. And maybe now, what are my parameters? I need a content parameter, right? My content parameter is going to be this UN beautiful notification content. It's got to be that, right? What else? How about a trigger, right? I can kind of load it all up, right? I can kind of, select my trigger as a trigger, that whole thing, right? But if I'm doing that, I'm almost, what does this thing do, my function? What is it going to do, right? If I just kind of add this stuff in there, right? A time interval, the other one is the tip. Remember, I want to make this generic so I can work with both my send a notification function and my schedule a notification function, right? So I could choose UN trigger, right? So UN notification trigger, UN notification trigger. That's the superclass, right? Because it's not a interval notification and it's not a calendar notification, right? This one. It's just some kind of trigger. We don't know which one it is, right? All right, so those are two things we need. The request, though, this request and the user notifications, this part here, that could be inside my function. This part, these two parts, right? Because that's the repeating part. Look, and here, those two parts. The other parts are slightly different, right? But those two parts are the same, right? And maybe what we want to call this function, right? We kind of want this thing to do what we want, what we're want to kind of, instead of add content, maybe what we want to do is we want to add a notification. All right, so that's our function. We take two things in our notification, right? So far, the one other thing we may want to send in is our identifier, right? So we'll say identifier, which we're going to call, which is going to be a string. And the reason that way we'll keep a little bit more flexible when it comes to everything that we're doing. I'm just going to copy these two things right here. So these two pieces, I'm going to take steps 3 and step 4 out. Delete them yet. I'm going to put them in here. All right, so those are the two pieces that are going to go in there, right? So now, that's the stuff that's coming inbound, right? So in our add notification, right? Our trigger, we're going to make this an optional, right? We're going to make the content up here cool. Identifier is going to be a string, right? Here's our string. And now we can do the following. We can use this, the same thing we've got in here for our request. Here's the request object that we're making, right? We're going to pass in identifier. Instead of message new this part, that won't be there. Well, this will be identifier, right? That's going to come from here, whatever the identifier is, right? The content is going to be coming from content, and the trigger is going to be coming from the trigger. So at least 2 steps, 3 and 4 now. I think we're good. I think we can kind of leave these 2 things in here for a little function. Make sense? So all I've changed is the identifier. I've changed this to this part right here. The trigger is going to be this part, and the content is going to come over here. So now that I've done this piece, let's refactor. I'm going to go down over here, and instead of this steps 3 and 4, I'm going to get rid of them. Right? So I'm going to say something like add notification. I'm going to pass in the content, the trigger, and now this is the interesting thing, right? My identifier. And my identifier has to be the thing that's unique, right? Which is just like I did like right down here where this message new identifier, this part right here, right, is the part that I'm going to send into the identifier. And this can be different for each one of my functions. So I'm just breaking it out one simple step at a time. By the way, with this way of doing things, I can change this message new because this is a notification. I can send off this is a new message. But maybe I want to do like a new schedule message. I can change this identifier to make it whatever I want. Let's do the other parts. This is that part, and I can do the same thing. I can get rid of all this, right? Get rid of all this, these 2 parts here, and I can add notification where I have my content as content, my trigger as a trigger, and my identifier as my identifier, which maybe what I want to do here is for my schedule a notification. So message.schedule.new.whatever I want. That's what it's going to look like. And this is instead of message.new notification. So message schedule, or and this will be message simple. Message simple. This one will be the simple message. This one will be the scheduled message. The 2 of them. All right, cool. So that's what we did. We just pulled out this stuff inside of a function. Now, can I pull the rest out? Let's take a look. There's still some duplication here for my content. And I think, you know, I want to show you this kind of stuff so that way you can think about ways of changing some of this stuff up, right? Like our content, you know, I'm not sure if I can do anything there, you know, because the body is going to be unique. And for me to create a little function that takes this one and this one, these 2 pieces, I'm not going to save anything, right? Even though I'm duplicating some of this, right, like this, unless I had a long group of things. And if that's the case, I'm going to make my own custom class or struct, right, that I load up with stuff and I send that content object full of the things that I want, right, the custom content object. Trigger is only 1 line. You know, I'm not sure if I would change this too much, but this part, this add notification part, makes sense because this is duplicating. All right, let's check to see if this all works. So, boom. There we go. Send a notification out. And let's see what's my pending notifications. There it is. One request pending, message.simple this time, .0, right? And there it is. And let's see my delivered notifications. Whoa, this is all my delivered notifications in my notification center. And you can see now that I have a new one, which is message.simple.0. See, this is the identifier. Each of these identifiers are unique for the message center, right? So it keeps track of all the notifications in your app, in your in the message center itself, which is kind of neat. And if I go back and if I send a schedule notification and one of these and one of these and one of these and one of these, and then I check my pending notifications, right? You can see that I've got a couple of requests, right? So pending notifications, there I got 0 pending nux that delivered. Here they are. And if I look at my delivered notifications, you can see that I've got a few simple ones. And this is weird what it's doing here, 024. And there's a couple scheduled. Let's go try a scheduled one. Let's look at pending. Right, I got schedule number 6, simple number 4. What happened here? And then view delivered. Here's schedule number 6. How come it says schedule 6? Because of the way I'm updating everything, right? So I'm not really keeping track of which kind of notification, any notification number is going to add. So it's going to have a unique identifier. Guys, that's it in a nutshell for notifications. I've shown you 2 types, the schedule type notification, as well as the simple notification, which notifies you immediately or within a certain interval. Those are the 2. If you take a look at the storyboard before we finish off, and if I look at my options for adding in other things, other kind of controls, instead of a button, is there some kind of calendar control that you can use? What kind of control would you use to show a calendar? Right? Think about the kind of control that you would use. So it wouldn't be text, right? Here's my page control. I could use a stepper, which is somewhat of, that might do it for me if I kind of step through. But I want to kind of pull it up a little, almost like a little table cell view that comes up. Here's a scroll view. Ah, the date picker view. That's one I want. And that's what I kind of would want here. Instead of schedule notification, I want to put a little date picker that comes up. Maybe what you would want to try and do, if you want to try and do this for yourself, is when you click schedule notification, there's a segue to a second screen, right? Where I do my calendar picking, whatever it's going to be, and then it takes me back. That's the kind of stuff. I can wrap this in a navigation controller, right, to make this app a little bit more interesting. Okay, so very straightforward stuff. And of course, the date picker, it has its own little nuances to set up, right? It's a little bit different than everything else because you want to get the return, whatever it returns from there is a proper date. And then all you do is whatever you get back from the date picker, you would change in your schedule application, this one here, your schedule notification one, you would change this part, right, in your, when you set up your calendar/date object. You want to change all this. So whatever you get back from your date picker will give you a proper date that you can match with this trigger, and then you're good to go. Okay, that's it for me today. I'm going to just put up one more commit. I'm going to say refactored application. And that's it. Now, when we come back, we'll take a short break. When we come back from the second part, we'll do more Unity.